Okay, welcome back. So now we're on the third level of the second skill of Unit 9. And we're going to keep building. So what we've done is worry about greatest common factors, and now we're going to see how we apply that to factoring more general expressions. So we'll have things like binomials or trinomials. And what factoring essentially means is that we're going to rewrite an expression as a product of two or more expressions. So here we have a single expression. And there's multiple ways to factor things, but right now we're focusing on GCFs. So how we do this is by looking at each term. In this case, we have two terms. And you first start by looking at the numbers. So you got a 5 and you got a 20. So you think back to what we've been doing. Find the greatest number that divides 5 and 20, or that goes into 5 and 20. And that would be 5. So the GCF for the numbers 5 and 20 is 5. Now, there's an x here, but not an x over in the second term. So there's no x that we can take out. So GCF is 5, just 5. So now how do we do this? Well, what you're going to do, a couple of options, but one way to think about it, and this is kind of the, every single step is shown, is we're going to take the 5 and we put it out in front of a set of parentheses. And then what we do is rewrite every term, the 5x, and we divide it by the GCF, which was 5. Plus, and then we write 20, and we divide that by the GCF that I got out in front. Okay, and so now what that does, if you simplify, so now what we can do is, cancel the 5's, and that's going to give us 5, or I'm sorry, that's going to give us just a 1x, and then 20 divided by 5. So what's 20 divided by 5? That's just going to be 4. And there we are. Okay, so that's kind of one way to think about it. Now keep in mind that this expression, so the two expressions we got here, let me change colors. The two expressions that we have, the beginning expression and the ending answer, are equal. Okay, so these in theory should equal each other. So that's actually a good way to check that you've done things correct. If you were to now go ahead and check, take 5 times x and distribute. So if you take 5 times x, you get 5x. And if you take 5 times 4, you get 20. And that's how you know that you haven't done anything wrong. These are the same. Okay? And so that's kind of how you could check your answers to make sure that you're doing these right. All right, let's look at this next one. So what we're going to do, same thing. Let's write down the GCF. So since there's a negative at the beginning, I'm just going to use a negative for my GCF, a negative number, and if there's x, there's an x. But it'll make things easier. So anytime there's a negative in front, use the negative sign with the GCF. And now we go and do what we did earlier. So between 3, 6, and 9, the largest number that goes into all three of those is 3. And now if we're looking at x cubed and x squared and x, you can take out an x because that's the largest that is in common to all three terms. And we're going to follow the same roadmap we did earlier. So if you take negative 3x cubed and you divide that by the GCF that we just took out, and we do the same thing here. So now we have minus, and we have 6x over negative 3x. We have another minus, and we got 9x, and also divide that by the GCF. And now we simplify. So go through each part. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is positive 1. X cubed divided by x is just x squared. A negative divided by a negative is positive. 6 over 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2. X divided by x. Oh, you know what? One little error I just noticed. That should have been a 6x squared in the numerator. Okay, so let's adjust. 6x squared divided by negative 3x. The x squared over the x is just going to give you a single x. All right, that looks better. And then a negative 9 divided by negative 3, that's going to be positive, because a negative over a negative is positive, and 9 divided by 3 is just 3. And x's cancel there entirely, and so this is your answer. Okay, and again, if you were to check and distribute, distribute and do all that stuff, you will get the same exact answer that we had earlier. Okay? Also notice that when we have a negative as part of the GCF, originally we had a negative, and a negative for our 3 original terms, and now they all switched to positive. So we have positive, positive, positive. Okay? And so that's actually, let's go ahead and write that down now. What if the leading coefficient is negative? So here we go. When you take out a negative GCF, it switches all the signs inside the parentheses. Okay? So let's actually do a couple just more problems, because this is, it takes some practice to get pretty good at this. So I'll do number 3. Okay, and I'm going to try to do this quicker. So looking at 3 and looking at 18, the largest number that goes into both is 3. And now looking at x cubed and looking at x, the largest number that goes into both of those, or the largest variable that goes into both of those, is x. We are subtracting the 2 terms, so that's going to be subtraction there in the middle. And now if you take 3x cubed and you divide it by 3x, and you take the 18x and you divide it by the 3x, that should give you your answer. And so that's going to be x squared, because the 3's cancel, minus 18 divided by 3 is 6. And now here the x's cancel. And so that would be your answer for number 3. Okay? Now, how can we do this even quicker? Well, if you're good at the mental part of arithmetic, like you can multiply and divide numbers in your head and you're pretty good at that, then here's kind of what that would look like. So I'll do number 4. Okay? So 4, 8, and 32, I can take out a 4. That's the greatest common factor. There's no x in the third term, so no x comes out. And so now what you can do is kind of go through it and work backwards. So now what you would think is 4 times what is going to give me 4x squared? Well, I would need to multiply it with x squared. That's how I get it, right? So if you imagine multiplying this out, 4 times x squared is 4x squared. Plus 4 times what is going to be 8x? Well, 4 times 2x is going to be 8x. Again, we're just kind of working backwards and getting that. Okay? And then finally, 4 times what is 32? Well, if you know that, that's just going to be 8. And we're done. So that's another way to think about it. But you have a couple of options now until you get really comfortable with this. If it helps, you can always go back to writing out the GCF. So here's the other option again. So how does it look like if we do it the original method? You take out a 4, rewrite the original expression, and divide everything by the GCF. So 4x squared divided by 4 plus 8x divided by 4 plus 32 divided by 4. And then you'll get this. X squared, 2x, and 8. All right, and so that's, in a nutshell, how you factor with the GCF.